I'm Steve Tudhope. I'm the class of 2001, and we're sitting here for a fireside chat with Greg Royce.
Hi, Steve. It's so cool of you to do this. Thank you.
I'm really excited to be a part of it. And yeah, when I was phoned to ask if I could involve myself, it was only with pleasure, because I think you've played such a big role in my life and sort of finding in terms of where my career has taken me, and certainly because I went into education, it was because of strong mentors like yourself. Which brings me to my first sort of question, and I'll never forget, in grade 6 we went on a camp. I think it might have been the first time we did it, but we did a tour up to Kruger, and we did the Bladder River Canyon, and we did a whole lot of the lodges.
One of the famous Andrew Bench tours.
I think it must have, look, they put us in a bus for 6 hours a day. Which I don't know.
Yeah, that's it.
It was a challenge, but for me as a bush lover and a history lover, it was incredible camp, and I'll never forget the campfire story that you told us the one night about Campbell's Lions.
Campbell's Lions, did I tell you guys that?
You told us Campbell's Lions. And that really resonated with me. And I think it sort of was the beginning of understanding that stories become such an important part of education, and particularly for boys. I mean, when we're captured by those stories, it really brings to light imagination and creativity. And I wanted to unpack a little bit more about that with you. I've tried to incorporate that into my own approach within a classroom.
Geez, Steve, that's really nice of you to bring that up. I'm ADD. Well, you probably know that. And I get impossibly bored in lectures and things that don't grab my attention. And I was always very conscious of you guys who were quite small at that stage. And to have somebody stand up in chapel and preach a sermon, or wherever you were, or tell you to, these are the values of the school, and oh no, it would just kill me. And I've always loved stories myself. So I tried as often as possible to tell stories that would have some meaning to you guys, you know, not just for the sake of, like, okay, apart from Campbell's Lions in the bush, which was probably designed to scare you witless, so that you guys would stay inside the dorms and not give us old Irks a hard time looking after you. But it is a story that was told to me as out in the bush. I can't believe you still remember that. And I think if stories are well told, they have the ability to capture your imagination and to be permanent. So I've tried to use them as often as possible. But what I love is that this school, St. Peter's, has got so many stories, and I use them. I tell the boys and the girls stories about pupils in the schools and what they've achieved. I mean, there's a boy whose father had some bad luck in business. I think his career was up and down. He was an entrepreneur, and I'm not sure whether I should mention his name, but anyway. So his father had suddenly hit a bad patch and lost everything. And he was going to come into boarding. It was in the days where we still had a standard 6. And he was going to come into boarding for standard 5 and 6, grade 7 and 8. We still had 8. And then his father could no longer afford it. So he wrote me a letter. I get into my study one morning, and there's this grubby piece of lined paper in a grubby envelope. And when I open it, it's a letter from him, "Dear Mr. Royce and the school executive." And he explains that he couldn't afford, his father could no longer afford to send him to boarding, but he was passionate about coming to boarding. And was there any way he could be granted a bursary? So he does this without his parents knowing. And he offers to pay a certain amount, as much as he can. I was so moved by the fact that he did this himself. So I presented it to Exco, and we agreed. So this guy, he comes into boarding and he gets a job at a pet shop. Well, there's no reason why I shouldn't mention his name, Hayden Tilley. And he gets a job in a pet shop, and he goes there on Saturday mornings when he doesn't have sport, and Sundays. And then every Monday morning when I get to my study, underneath the door is another envelope with a 10 rand note, which was most of his wages. Well, eventually we had to give him some of that money back because he had to buy toiletries and things like that. But I just thought that was absolutely incredible. He's now, he's a psychologist, but he's a specialist psychologist, and he's practicing from Harley Street in London, the great Harley Street. It's just, there's so many stories like that about you guys, St. Peter's boys, that are just remarkable.
Oh, it's an incredible community to be part of. We're very, very, very lucky. I mean, the school's changed so much since then. I mean, you mentioned boarding, and I remember the stories of the Waverley Wanderers,
The ghosts.
And you know, I've been up to the girls' school a few times, and it's weird to see it now how it is, and thinking that's where we ate lunch and did prep every day. And
I feel exactly the same way. I just wonder if it ever enters the girls' dreams or their nightmares. Are they ever aware of what went on there? Ferber Northard had this apocryphal story about the boys who used to sneak out at night to skinny dip. And one night he heard them. So he came down, and one boy, who was a bit larger than the rest, was on the founder's side, had got through the window, the small cottage window pane frames, and then he got stuck. So Ferber was presented with this large bottom, got his cane, one, and on two, the boy popped straight through the window.
And I suppose the power of stories, it's so appropriately South African as well. If we think about our history tradition, it's an oral tradition. And it's something unique about being South African and the story. And I think part of that inspired me to be a history teacher, because I love those stories. And I think back to some of the stories around the Boer War. And I had Jimmy Benson also as a grade 6 teacher, and some of the stories he told us. But sure, certainly the stories around the Boer War and that sort of inspired career choices for me going forward.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, stories should be inspirational. They should be. They're just an amazing technique. I wish I'd had more of it when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I suppose that takes us quite nicely to my next question, and sort of the St. Peter's that I was at, and the St. Peter's where it is now. The evolution has been really, really cool to watch, and sort of, you know, from a distance have been a part of. But to keep up with educational trends and establish the school with the reputation that it has now, how have you approached keeping up with those educational trends?
I think you probably are well aware that St. Peter's was always, from before your time, was known for being innovative in so many ways. And so that's something that appeals to me very much, the whole academic side. And so it wasn't really difficult, because I arrived here and found lots of people had the same sort of interests. So it's been a matter of keeping in touch with the best possible research that was happening in as many fields as we could that would affect the way we taught you guys, to give you the best possible chance, so that we would want the impact to last. You know, one of the lines in our mission says to prepare children for senior school and the world beyond. So there's a slight contradiction in that in senior school you have to pass matric, and matric is very content based, and then if you go on to tertiary, it's not so content based. And it's so much more about applying knowledge and analyzing knowledge. So we feel that we need, if we're going to do our job properly, we can't just fill you full of content which might be out of date half an hour after we've taught it. We need to show children how to research, to be skeptical about knowledge, to ask questions, not to just accept it, and to be able to analyze information and then apply it. So one of our mantras would be relate, create, donate. So the relate part refers to knowing something so well, mastering the concept that you can relate it to somebody else. You can teach it to somebody else. Then the create part is taking that knowledge and doing something with it, something important, something useful, something of value. And then donate is once you've been able to do that, once you've mastered it, you've taught it, you've applied it, donate, go back and teach it to somebody else. And we like our children to be able to do that. We like the boys and girls to be able to do that in the classroom. So those who master a concept and are able to apply the knowledge must help the other guys that are struggling with it, guys or girls, because that embeds it even further. So that's, for example, one concept. And I think there's a feeling amongst the staff that they always try and do. They look back at what they've done. Reflection is big, and they seek ways to do it even better. And that applies to anything, absolutely anything. For example, in dramas, and drama is big at St. Peter's. Yeah, everybody gets involved. There's quite a few of the staff that would like to get involved, so we have the variety show. So when you guys are putting on house plays, or the girls are putting on house plays, and then the big drama that used to happen before COVID, there was a feeling that we could do better by the boys and or the girls if they worked the sound and light. So that was made optional. They were shown the basics, and away they've gone. And then they would come back to us and say, well, this soundboard is a bit primitive from there. We like something that could do this, this, and this. And so that's how we've developed. We've got a better soundboard. In fact, we've got several better soundboards. But there's a constant search for improvement to better things. So that's resulted in us having a very different way of teaching, which we think you guys, it resonates better with you. It's much more important to learn how you learn, because you're going to learn for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The lifelong learner.
Exactly. And there's so many myths, absolute rubbish about it. Like my parents always, I can remember parents of my age group getting really exercised when you went into your bedroom, closed the door to study, and then had loud music. I mean, they assumed that you couldn't study if that was the case. But of course, as you know, everybody learns differently. So,
I was always a female role in those drama productions. I don't know why. And Pam Schoon used to lend me her heels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were the only heels I could fit into. My mom never had. She had small feet. So
yeah. Oh, that's so nice to hear. So lots of boys liked female roles, though. I'm not saying you did, but they were very popular. I think Oaks loved to put on a bra and fill it with something and wiggle out onto the stage.
Yeah, your balloons and one of the reminders in this South African context around what it means to create a safe space for learning, but beyond that, as we face some of the challenges that we do within South African education. What does that mean for St. Peter's, and how have you gone about trying to face those challenges?
So firstly, to talk about a safe space for students, for people, that is super important for us, because you can't, the moment you feel that you've been humiliated in some way, you're sitting in class, you put up your hand, you get told, no, you're wrong. That just disinclines you to take a risk again. So that's something I hope all current pupils feel strongly, and I hope you felt it to a certain extent, that mistakes should be allowed. And half the time teachers ask questions. Well, I'm not talking about our staff. They're actually playing guess what's in my head. And they might phrase the question incorrectly, and then when you answer, you get told no. But if the teacher reflected on what they'd asked, they'd probably find that half the time the answer they get is actually what it should be. So we try not to do that. And we also try to steer away from one right answer to make people feel comfortable. And then when I was at school, and if you stuffed it up, if you got it wrong, then everybody would laugh at you. And then you'd feel like a real turkey. So I hope we don't do that anymore. Now let's just spread a bit further into the other area you spoke about, the inequality in our country. And it's so pronounced here. We've got an informal settlement or a squatter camp across the road. I think we try as far as we can to make all the students here conscious of their privilege and how lucky they are. It's non-stop. I think it's in the classrooms. I think it's in chapel. Do you recall that? And then we ask them to help people that aren't aren't as fortunate as are we. And one thing that strikes me is there's so many people-led initiatives. You'll remember them from your own time to help other people. The little Schlebusch with the shoes, James Schlebusch collecting shoes. There was a girl the other day that wanted to collect money for she went on a trip to one of the schools with which we partner. So we partner with a couple of schools and we go and help them. So these are state schools. We try not to be patronizing. We ask them for what we can do to help. So if we take the school in the prison down the road, they wanted help with reading, teaching reading, especially since it's in English and it's not their home language. So that's what we do. We go there. But what I love about it is that the teachers who run it have found a way to involve the children. So the grade 7s and I think the grade 6s go across there and also read. So they can see firsthand that A, they're making a contribution, and B, they can see the big gap in privilege between them and us. And then from a whole school perspective, we have had bursaries. How do we share our good fortune? How do we include more people, those who wouldn't normally be able to afford this? So we have had bursaries, we still have bursaries, but we decided to focus on teacher development because we think that's where we can have the biggest effect. So our tiny little prep school hosts 25 teacher interns, all of them from previously disadvantaged and currently disadvantaged circumstances. We raise money and we produce some of the finest graduates, bar none, in the country, no matter which university they go to. And we know they're so good, they're good enough to teach anywhere in the world. We would employ all of them if we could. And they're going to affect generations of children. And we explain to the pupils who are here, because they have the interns in their classrooms every day. We explain to them what we're doing, why we're doing. And of course, in good old-fashioned St. Peter way, we expect them to treat those interns with the same level of respect as they treat their own teachers and any adults here.
In the 26 years, are there any standout memories, standout stories for you?
There are hundreds. Throwing stones on Andrew Bench's roof after a housemaster's dinner, but that doesn't involve pupils. There's a laugh. I remember. So this is not going to be a great, massive experience. This is just one of the things. I was in chapel, and you remember I was quite a stickler for good discipline in chapel. So we're praying, and I think I was up at the lectern praying, and the whole school was kneeling, heads down, in the pews. And then I noticed, I heard a funny sound. I wasn't sure what it was, but I carried on praying, and then I heard it again. It was a sort of sound, and I started to get annoyed. And then I stopped praying and looked up and glared at everybody. I didn't notice anything. I did see some shoulders beginning to heave, so something amusing was happening. And then I saw a boy who was kneeling. He was at the end of the pew. And I saw his leg jerking like this as he kneeled. So I glared at him, but he wouldn't meet my eye. And then I lost it. So I swept down from the lectern down the aisle, academic gown billowing until I got there, and I was just about to grab him when my dog, my Jack Russell, appeared in the aisle, had a firm grip on his shoelaces and was pulling. And then the whole chapel erupted, and I blushed and went back and finished the prayer after telling the dog to bugger off home.
I suppose it speaks to the family of the school and the values that we hold dear. Yeah, thank you. It's been awesome spending this time with you, and congratulations on what you've achieved here, and I can only wish you everything of the best in your future chapters.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and for the thoughtfulness in the things you asked me. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Cheers.